These are some pictures of our witnesses. Some of our witnesses are no longer living, as a matter of fact, and we've been doing this for, well, I've been doing this for over 8.5 years at this point, and that's pretty much a 24/7 job. In a sense, I'm always on call. I'm always on the job, even when I seem to be not working. I could be sitting in a restaurant, for example, you know, talking with friends. I'm being surveilled around the clock. Anybody I meet with, anybody I talk to on the phone is being surveilled. Anyone who gets to know me, you know, sounds kind of crazy, but anyone who gets to know me becomes sort of a person of interest, you might call them. And so it just goes with the territory, and certain people out there will know what I mean. Now, one of the things that it became obvious during the 8.5 years that I began interviewing people, and let me say that right now on the internet, you can watch interviews with people, whistleblowers sometimes, and all kinds of people. And really, Project Camelot was a groundbreaker in this area. We became a grassroots movement around the world. We have a huge following. And, you know, I get recognized at various kind of strange places, like we were hiking through some wild area of Ireland, and we wanted to go on a hike or something to see some circles or something. And there was a farmer there, and he said, he saw me like across the field, and this other person was going as an emissary to ask him if we could use his land, if we could cross his land. And he said, well, wait a minute, you mean it's Project Camelot? And he said, is that Kerry Cassidy? Well, only if I can shake her hand, and then you can go across our land. So that was really, you know, like fun and very cool, because it meant that, you know, we're getting the word out. It's, you know, it's not about fame and fortune. Actually, fortune is the last thing that's happening. But, you know, it's all about getting the word out and waking people up. And now people around the world are picking up camcorders and basically doing what we do. But I have to say that when we started, we were really a radical organization. It was myself and Bill Ryan. He is an Englishman. And just the two of us, we hit the road with a consumer-grade camcorder, and we decided we wanted to get the truth out about what was really going on. We wanted disclosure, and we decided to interview, specifically concentrate on whistleblowers from above top secret. There's a lot of information out there to suggest, and I can say that Julian Assange, for example, contacted Camelot sometime in the past. We were out on the road doing what we do before WikiLeaks ever hit the mainstream. And what they do is they collect documentation, okay? And what we do not do is collect documentation. We specialize in witness testimony. It's my point of view that ultimately the history of planet Earth will be told through witness testimony, not by paperwork, and paperwork can be faked, as I always say, just like Obama's birth certificate, if you don't believe me. So the bottom line is that it's not about history being told by the victors in the future of the sort of the multiverse in which we live, but it's really about you and your parents and your grandparents, and you are the ones who are the witnesses of what's going on here on planet Earth, and you will ultimately be the ones to tell the true story. So that's why we interview witnesses. That's why witness testimony is so crucial. And there's more reasons for that. And one of the reasons is because of who you are. And this is what has come out of all the 8.5 years around the clock of doing this kind of work. And we have had our lives threatened on occasion, and we've also been very well protected on occasion. So at the moment, what goes on is that what comes out of everything, the very biggest secret is who you are. Out of all the secrets, and we've got lots of them, Many of them we were able to reveal. I can say that when I say who you are, what has come down is basically you seem to be a mixture of at least 12 ET races. Their DNA contributed to this grand experiment that we call a human being, this vehicle in which you're a spirit, you're a soul, having an earthly experience as this vehicle, a human. Now, you could be having an experience as a praying mantis or another vehicle that you chose, but ultimately a soul is a spiritual crystallization that is, in essence, a vehicle that goes up the dimensions and beyond, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on, and a journey back to source. So that's what creating a soul is all about. So from my perspective, okay, and I have spent quite a bit of time this weekend interviewing Simon Parks, who's a stellar witness, and just phenomenal video footage with him. I think you're going to be very pleased to see it when it gets out. But from my perspective, you are not a certain soul. You are ultimately a soul that does not have a body. You have a sort of an auric field, or whatever you want to say. You can manifest as whatever you want, but once you leave this dimension, you can become and be anything you want. So the thing is that I would not say we have a soul, a praying mantis soul, or a reptilian soul, or this, that. So ultimately you are a soul having a worldly experience, and this experiment, this vehicle, is worth saving, because this is an absolutely grand experiment. Many ET races have contributed their DNA to create this vehicle that has so much potential and so much unused potential. And I'm going to, over the course of this talk today, I'm going to prove this to you in ways in which nobody does, nobody talks about, and no scientists are doing for you. But I think you'll walk away from here with a different point of view about who you really are. So when we look at sort of life on planet Earth, we want to ask some crucial questions in order to sort of start to drill down as to what's really going on planet Earth. And Project Camelot set out to do what we call is paint the big picture. And it was through witness testimony in all the different areas that we begin to pull those pieces together. Now, there's going to be, I'm going to talk about how we gather the evidence, how we choose the witnesses, and so on. But the bottom line here are just a few of the questions that you need to ask. So you need to ask, what is the plot? So in essence, if you're watching this as a movie, who's on top, who's on the bottom, what are you fighting for? What's your mission? What's your mission here? These are very important things to ask. Do you need to take sides in the battle for planet Earth and for your sovereignty? So in essence, you're kind of here, you've incarnated here, in a sense you're fighting for this team. The team is the human team, okay? And I know a lot of you have ET exposure, and you have sort of some ET parents that are your ET parents, and you are time travelers by nature, and this is something that I can go into further as we talk. Or as I talk here, but the bottom line is that you are in this human vehicle because you decided this was a magnificent experiment that you wanted to be part of, okay? And therefore, in spite of your ET heritage, and you will have allegiances to maybe 2, maybe 3 races mainly, maybe more, maybe you'll be multicultural, so to speak. But the bottom line is, and I hope that you will sort of take this on board and understand this, because some people, we have a lot of new agers, we have a lot of people who've come onto the planet even recently, and we have plenty of young people, by the way, who come to Camelot. We have no problem with that. And I'm contacted all the time by young people, and that's a beautiful thing. So I want to kind of correct that perception that has maybe been put out there by another speaker, because that's simply not true. We do have a very good, solid, young audience. They are very, very aware, and they are very hip to what goes on. Their way of learning is different. Their way of participating is different. But it doesn't mean we should judge them because they don't come down and sit here in this conference room with us. Ultimately, I can tell you they'll watch this, very likely. by the other means that it goes out over the internet. Keep in mind that we're ultimately telepathic. We're ultimately able to communicate across space and distance. So ultimately, coming into each other's presence in a very physical 3D way, although it can be very valuable, especially now on planet Earth, it is not necessary, okay? It's simply a way, it's a mode of transport, it's a mode of communication. It's not the only way. It doesn't mean someone isn't learning or being actively participating in something or a revolution, which this is, and you know, an awakening that's happening on planet Earth. So it's all about the humanity and the nature of consciousness. In the end, consciousness is king. That's the key. That's kind of a key phrase you might want to keep in mind, because that means that no matter what kind of battle is being done, you know, with guns and technology and this and that and the other, in the end, it's all about your consciousness. It's a unification between your heart and your mind, your multidimensional selves and your higher self. And so ultimately your mind, just by the way, they've done scientific experiments. They can take your mind out of your body altogether and you can still think. What does that tell you? It tells you not just with your heart, it's beyond that. You are a spiritual being inhabiting this form. It doesn't mean this form is you permanently. This is just, and I use this example with people, and many people will know this, and you know, it'd be simple for people that recognize their prior lives and all of that. But if you can look at your hand, you can think of your hand with your fingers. These would be like, let's say 5 fingers, 5 simultaneous, because all time is simultaneous ultimately. 5 incarnations, simultaneous incarnations on planet Earth or in the multiverse. And another 5 with this hand. You have at least 12, probably 24 and maybe more. We have multiple timelines, and I know I'm throwing all these things out, you know, one right after the other, but I'm actually going to assume from the caliber of people I've spoken to here over this weekend that you're up to speed with what I'm saying. And so if you think about it that way, that you have that many simultaneous bodies, so to speak, on Earth and in the multiverse, then we are they, okay? They are us. The ETs are our forefathers. You know, child is father to the man. Ultimately, it's very likely, because you're a human hybrid, every single one of you, and because we're a hybridized species, a very high-level hybrid, meaning you took this kind of an experiment has been going on in eons, and we're actually, some people say we're the 6th seeding of humanity here on planet Earth. I'm not sure it's quite that many. I can give you some of my sources for this information, but Ashiana Dean, who I interviewed, who is in touch with a group called the Guardians, which is a group of races who contributed their DNA to this experiment, and they don't all get along all the time, but they are what is called service to others. So that particular group called the Guardians, as far as she has gathered, and she's a very good vessel for having gotten this information through. And I've traveled with her, I've interviewed her in like, I don't know, 6-hour interview, and I've read her books, the Voyager books, and I have to say they're the best history of humanity to date that I've ever come across on planet Earth, bar none. That doesn't mean that there's not necessarily some disinfo in there, because every vessel, regardless of who you are, when you're getting information, it goes through the filter that is you. And you may be putting a filterization process happening where it depends how clear the filter is, whether the information comes out with clarity or not. So that's really important. And we're not just talking about what's called channeling. Actually, Ashiana Dean does not consider channeling what she does. She gets what she calls downloads. She considers it a whole different thing. She does not believe that it's healthy, in fact, to channel. And that's not to sort of deride anyone in the audience who's doing channeling. That's a soul choice that you're making. You may be removing yourself so that something can come through. That's not necessarily advisable. It may be the only way you can do what you do. You may be making a sacrifice. Your physical body may suffer during that time. There's evidence to that effect with prior channelers, etc. This is a huge subject, and I can really go in almost every direction. So I'm going to try to, go down the road here for a while, and then at certain points I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you which way you want to go, okay? So there is a psychology of whistleblowers, and I can get into that with you, and then I can tell you the current status of some of the whistleblowers, and then we can talk about solutions. I can talk about activating your Kundalini, as I've spoken briefly about earlier, and so on. So now hopefully I can do this. Okay. So out of all the years of testimony, the bottom line that I've come across to sort of gel it all down is that there are two main paths that humanity has and a choice to be made. And one is called angelic humans. And this is not meaning literally like angels with little wings either. It's a sort of a terminology that takes into effect the fact that you come from source and you return to source. Okay? So you don't just come from nothing and then, maybe make it back. That's not what happens. If you have a soul, if you are come here, you have an eternal soul. That means we've been here before, we're coming back, we're doing this job. Some of you are caught in that net of reincarnation, and you will keep coming back until you get it right, until you figure out how to get out of the net. And then you may come back in out of choice, and that may be what's happening with some of the what they call new children, making a conscious choice that, yes, you escaped the net, but you know that these humans are back here on planet Earth, and they're coming to a very crucial time in their development, and that you want to help. And you will come back in, but you will not forget. So you will not, be sort of dazed and confused. When you come back in, you'll be more like Boriska, where you have clear as a child, and Boriska's a Russian boy who had clear recall at the age of, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of having been a soldier on Mars and part of a race there who ultimately chose to come to Earth and incarnate here. And that's actually our most popular interview. The interview with Boriska, we flew to Russia against all odds and interviewed this young Russian boy. He is now in his late teens. We're trying to get back in touch with him. Actually, somebody here at the conference has said that perhaps she can get us back in touch. We'll see about that. But that'd be awesome to do an update with him, as you can appreciate, if he still has the consciousness he came in with. Forgetting is one of these battles that we have. We are trying to remember. That's what it's about. So when you listen to me, I'm not really telling you anything you don't know. I'm just triggering your memories to remember where you came from and remember who you are. And that's what all these people are really doing for you. Ultimately, you're just remembering. So we have two paths. One is a natural development that will allow us to use the DNA we've been given to activate fully the junk DNA and all the abilities that you have. Because think of 12 ET races with multiple abilities. That means they can fly, they're incredibly telepathic, they can, create technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever it is, those qualities, those gifts are in you. And these gifted children that you're so in awe of, that's you. You all have these gifts. You all came in with these gifts. The difference between them and you, more than anything, in my opinion, is that you've gone through sort of the grinder, especially if you're older and you're in this audience. You've gone through a dumbing down, bad food, bad water, bad this, bad that, programming like you can't believe. And ultimately, that has put you in a place where your vehicle is now in a weakened state. But you can climb back out of there. You can even do it in this lifetime. And there are ways to do that. But ultimately, what we're talking about is to bring out your gifts. And every single one of you has a special gift. That's what's so unique about this human genome. And I think you can appreciate that if you have a lot of friends, family members, etc. You'll know that you're each so uniquely different. And the gift you have, the special gift that's unique to you, you may not even have uncovered it yet, and you could be, you know, in your 60s or whatever your age is. So it's key, because think of this as a consciousness field. Right now we have a field of consciousness that's being created by this discussion I'm having with you. And this consciousness field is going out with ripples here into Britain, here into the local community. Here they're starting to feel it. The vibrations go out. It has energetics, and it moves across the globe like a wave, if you will. And so it resonates, especially if we speak the truth. This is what goes out. It goes out from your heart chakra, it combines with your mind and above, and we are also being helped in that process. There are energetics. I have a scientist called Paul LaViolette. He's considered by some to be the Einstein of our time. And brilliant man. I've interviewed him several times. He talks about a galactic superwave that may be on the way here. He talks about waves of energy that are coming in and that we are moving into as we traverse. And this, meaning this galaxy, this universe, moving in the solar system, you know. And basically, these energetics are now bombarding Earth. And see, the reptilians know this, and the various races visiting here know this. And this is a very fascinating sort of place. In a sense, you could sort of think of it as a petri dish, but it's at a very crucial stage. Now, I would say the last time we were in such a crucial stage would have been Atlantis. And so I talk often about Atlantis and the fact that a lot of us came from the time of Atlantis, have incarnated again here at this very crucial time. There is even some evidence that the reason we seem to have what seems like overpopulation is because most of the souls that have ever incarnated on the planet have tried to come in at this time. So they're here. So we don't really have overpopulation. That's an illusion. It's one of the things, scarcity, that they try to sell you. But it is something that is affecting what is going on here and why it's such a crucial time. And so this is what angelic humans, and having our sovereignty at this crucial time and being allowed to use our free will, and then educating ourselves through consciousness to change this multiverse, to change this small planet of which we are a part, and by doing so to affect the multiverse even. And so then the other side, the other path is robotic Superman. And this involves the transhumanism, it involves the artificial intelligence, it involves the machine, the focus on technology that you all know. Now the one doesn't exclude the other, so it doesn't mean because I say angelic human that you can't use technology. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying, though, is that technology doesn't run you, you run it. And that's an important distinction, because ultimately, if we are not in charge of our own destiny, then we are going to become and continue to be slaves on this planet. And that's not a good thing. So that's where we're going with all of this, and it's really big picture thinking. So basically, you want to know what they want, when they're visiting here, and of course they have all different agendas, and it's important to think what is known now as exopolitically, because we are really talking about good beings, bad beings, what we call service to self versus service to others. And that's the ultimate distinction. And if you are familiar with David Wilcock, you will know the emphasis on the raw material, RA material, and you can go onto the internet and read that. That was some very early channeled material that came through Carla Ruckert, I think is her name, if I have it right. And basically has a lot of very good stuff. It's still not completely accurate. It's still a certain level. But it's worthwhile, and it can kind of give you a very sophisticated picture of what's going on and what incarnation is really about here on planet Earth, and what you might want to consider in your approach to life, instead of living sort of this very narrow, programmed experience and just occasionally going to like a UFO conference like this where you might get expanded mentally and then have to go back to the grind. It's worth continuing this process of expanding your mind, as you may appreciate. So bottom line, what do they want? They really want humanity, is I say 2.0, in essence that we are humanity 2.0. You might say they want humanity 3.0 at this point. They are creating a new race of humans. Now, there's a few different versions of that, because one of the things that happened was the gray ET hybridization program, in which the grays really did abduct a huge number of human females, did do a genetic engineering thing where they did put gray DNA into, and you have the children now being born on Earth and off the Earth as well. And this is, some of your children may be fully, what I say is half gray. So half of their genome may be a mixture of various ET races, the other half may be a gray. What does that mean to humanity? Well, one of the things we know about some of the races of grays, and specifically these ones that did this rather in an intervention style to try to save their race and also to get onto an ascension path as a being, was to do this more or less against our will in some cases. And this is a massive program. They are not revealing to you the massiveness of all of this. I recently interviewed Mark Richards, Captain Mark Richards from the Secret Space Program. He and his father were very deep he was in the Navy and his father in the Air Force. He also worked with the Air Force to some degree. He's now in prison, has been for 30 years. He's up on charges of murder that he was framed for by the people that the powers that be, so to speak, because they were afraid he was going to start going out against, their will, their wishes. And so he's been there for quite a long time. He's a very stellar witness, and his wife is somebody I've gotten to know. Her name is Joanne Richards. She also speaks on the circuit, as we call it. He and his family are Illuminati bloodline. They've spent some time here in England. He knew his father. He and his father did know Churchill and various important members of the Illuminati and higher echelons of the British power structure. But the bottom line is, the testimony I've gotten from him. Well, let me do a survey. See, how many people have seen my first Mark Richards interview? Raise your hand. Pretty good. Okay, and how many has seen the second one that came out relatively recently? Not so many, but some. Okay, so the second one is even more sort of gangbusters than the first. And it's not an easy task to go into Vacaville prison and, have to sit there. But I sit there opposite him at the first time it was about 2 hours. The second time it was more like 4 hours, and I'm sitting, opposite to him, chair to chair, and basically peppering him nonstop with questions about the secret space program and what we're doing, because my motivation is to tell you the truth of what's going on. So I want to know everything that we can find out about what they're really doing, because they're doing it, first of all, with your taxpayer dollars. And they're doing it with your children because they're recruiting them and using them. And they're doing them with you when they turn you into super soldiers and so on, and using you even in the ether. And you've had a testimony from somebody who's all wired up and so on. He's even an old, Kieran, I think is his name, he's even an older version of what they're doing now, in which they're peppering the chemtrails with nano. That is actually turning all of you into a form of super soldier. And what Mark Richards says about that is that they want to turn you, what they really want in humanity is a docile super soldier type of human. And what that means is someone who will take orders, not question the orders, and at the same time have a very resilient body and be able to, go out on missions and so on and so forth, and create an army of humans. So that's kind of what we're talking about. with robotic Superman. So they want to put inside you nano, put inside you, have you respond to AI. And there's a lot of evidence that there's at least one major AI running the planet at this time, orchestrating and triangulating what you will do. One of its main jobs is to anticipate your behavior in reaction to the things that happen. And if you think about that, if you need an artificial intelligence to anticipate human behavior and triangulate it and strategize what to do and how to deal with it, then what does that tell you about the human? It tells you that they are probably uncontrollable, unpredictable, and you don't have control over them, right? So this is very interesting because look at all the controls you have, even in place here in England. You have, massive surveillance on every level. You have, the whole place is peppered with military bases, of course. And you have rules and regulations like I can't believe, even coming as an American, I'm being honest with you. The bottom line is they watch everything you do and they listen to everything you do. And so why is it that if you were so dumb, if you were just like dumb animals, they wouldn't have to spend so much time. They would just put you in a pen, feed you, and throw away the key. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that you are always unpredictable. Why are you unpredictable? Well, one of the reasons is because you are a composite of at least 12 ET races DNA. Okay? So what does that do? That makes you like totally like a being that they're like trying to get their hands around. And plus, on top of that, your consciousness is rising as a result of not only the new children coming in and not forgetting who they really are, but several other reasons that Camelot is part of that are sort of this kind of push for consciousness that the internet is a huge part of. You are waking up, and even through osmosis, which we can learn just by being in the presence of each other, something they don't tell you. But you can walk home tomorrow and go among your family and they were never here, but ultimately they're getting the information from you, even if they don't know it. And what's going to happen is what we are going to watch and witness here on planet Earth very quickly now. We've reached sort of a critical mass of people like us that are awake and aware, what I call awake and aware. And what's going to happen is by our presence and by associations such as this with the resonance field and all the videos that are out there and all sci-fi movies, et cetera, what happens is that's going out around the planet Earth, and ultimately it's starting to spark in new places. It's almost like a virus sort of cropping up and you didn't know that was catchable. This consciousness virus, if you will, is awakening people worldwide. So people that started at ground zero like a week ago are going to get to where you were after 3 years of diligent researching. They're going to get there in light speed, because this is how we learn. This is how the humans are. And so you can just witness this. I've even seen it in my own family. I've seen people that were just completely in the dark, wouldn't listen to a thing I said, and suddenly they're catching on like that because it's been put into you. Disclosure has been going on now since the 1950s. You've been seeing it on the media. The major media has been doing that. Why is that? Because the Illuminati, the people that are running this place, and the ETs behind them, who are really motivating them in many ways, what they were doing is creating two societies. There's a rogue civilization that involves a secret space program that has technology, we're told, that as much as 10,000 years in advance of where we are now. And you are still driving around with tin can cars, with these old-fashioned engines, when free energy is freely used all the time in the secret space program, plasma physics, et cetera, and another form of energy that I just found out about through Mark Richards called dark energy that they get from exploded neutron stars that allows you to go interstellar in a massive way. and has put us in a whole different level, toe-to-toe with some of the ET races out there, which they're not really happy about. So this is what we have sort of as a split in society. And you people out there are a bridge. You are the bridge of consciousness linking the other side of humanity that just has no clue whatsoever, and the truth of what's really going on, of what we're capable of. And we're all on that journey, even those people in the secret space program. So it's important to understand that your children are being recruited in this sort of war of worlds, if you will, that you and your consciousness is being utilized on a daily basis, that your televisions are sort of being used to program you, to recruit you into certain lines of thinking. And one of the things in my interview with Mark Richards talks about the fact that there are two what are basically reptilian races that want to run the planet and are pretty much doing so, it appears. And there is at least one race of beings, the raptors, and more. I think the blue ETs are another, and there are some other positive ones. The Pleiadians are kind of standard positive ones, but they seem to have receded, according to Mark, from the game here for the time being. Although many of you are seeded with DNA from the Pleiadians, so that's important. But the bottom line is you've got the Andromedans. You know, you've got some races that sort of have a double-pronged approach to their agenda. So yes, they want to see you proceed and progress, but yes, either they want to sort of attach their wagon to yours so that if you progress, they progress, or they want to utilize you and keep you alive so they can utilize you to do certain things, and so on. And control and domination is a real powerful game going on here on planet Earth. And you're all, again, you may be working for them and not know it. Even if you're a so-called New Ager, you may be feeding their machine because, as you know, they're always playing both sides of the playing field. They're, you know, in America we have, you know, the Democrats and Republicans. Well, they own both of them. And there's no doubt whatsoever about this. There's a talk show host named Mike Harris who does a very good radio show on the same radio show network as I do, which is Revolution Radio. And he has a relationship that he's developed with Gordon Duff, who's a CIA agent. And he doesn't like me to say that, but that's really true. But he's from what appears to be the good guys. And he's an editor of Veterans Today. He works a lot in media, but he also works in a lot of other areas as well. The bottom line is Mike Harris, the reason he even developed this relationship with Gordon Duff, who's, you know, working with a secret agency, is because Mike ran for governor of Arizona. And when he was about to, you know, when he was running, they actually tried to kill him. They made him an offer he was not supposed to refuse, and when he refused it, they tried to kill him. And he got his wake-up call, so to speak, because he realized he could not progress in politics, you know, and this is a man who wants to be president, you know, unless he made a deal with them, and he refused to do so because he was a principled person. So what he did is make a transition to become, you know, go onto the radio and start interviewing people, veterans, whistleblowers, basically kind of doing what I do, except just on the radio. So this is the kind of trajectory that we have going on, and you've heard from a multiple number of people here that will substantiate some of what I'm saying. But I want to say that we have over 300 video interviews. I have countless radio shows because I've been doing that for about 4 years now. And so there's lots of audio interviews that I do every week. I interview somebody. Not all the time whistleblowers, but definitely lots of very good information. And then I have articles. Some of our whistleblowers do not want to go on camera. And more whistleblowers, by the way, won't go on camera. So a lot of the testimony I'm getting lately is off camera. For example, Mark Richards, they wouldn't let me bring in a camera. They wouldn't let me bring in a recording device. All I was given this time, the time before this, I had nothing. And this time I got to have a pencil. And then the guards had a big argument over whether they should really give me the pencil because they said, well, it's a weapon. And so, you know, this is what we're dealing with. But ultimately, we did bring it in. His wife was with me. She took notes. And so we were able to document, you know, every little thing he said as best we could. And she was quite good at her notes. And my recall was quite good as well. So that's what you get when you get the second Mark Richards interview. The thing about my interview with him and with whistleblowers in general, and I guess I should sort of talk about that now. So there's a psychology of interviewing whistleblowers. I can say, if you don't know my interviews, that I am a very unusual interviewer. And I have become somewhat notorious because I don't kiss the ass of the person I'm interviewing, unlike most radio show and other kinds of hosts. In fact, I don't at all. I mean, basically, I sort of challenge them. I am also able to detect programming. And they have a lot of, especially whistleblowers that come from black projects, have programming embedded in them. And it's detectable. Even, you know, a relatively uneducated person in this field could detect that programming, because what happens is, it's when a person gets in front of you or gets in front of camera and is asked a question, and they start spieling off stuff without thinking about it. And they just go on and on and on, and they're on a program. And it's just a tape running in their head. And so what I will do is I will cut across that and I will ask them a direct question. And usually it discombobulates them slightly, throws them off their track, and then all of a sudden the intellect will kick in and they will suddenly answer the question. So sometimes in spite of themselves. And so why do I do that? I do that because I'm interested in getting the truth. I think that serves them, ultimately their mission, their sole purpose on earth, and it serves us, it serves you, who without the truth, it's very hard for you and your families to make an informed decision about what to do with the rest of your lives, in essence, here on planet Earth. To say nothing of what you might do when you leave. So that's what goes on. So what is the whistleblower psychology? The psychology is, and you know, we've got people like Henry Deacon, who came out under his own name, Arthur Neumann, several years later, who basically want to retract their statements sometimes. They'll give us a testimony, and that was all written because he wouldn't go on camera, and then all of a sudden call us up and say, no, you've got to take it down. I had Duncan O'Finian threaten me, basically. He's the super soldier I interviewed, and you know, tell us, you know, to take the testimony down. Now, the good thing about Project Camelot is that when we first started, Bill and I agreed unequivocally that we were going to get the truth out, but we were going to do it for free. So that's what we do. Every interview that I do goes out onto the internet free on our YouTube channel. And we've kept with that over the 8.5 years. Now, since that time, I do organize conferences, and I organize online Camelot roundtable discussions between what might be whistleblowers or researchers or both. And those I charge money for, because those are organizational things that I have to, first of all, pay the speakers. And I also have to spend my time, you know, getting people online with their Skype and all this kind of, and me and my webmaster. And Camelot is just so you know, I know some people have a sort of mistaken idea about what Camelot is. Project Camelot is, in the beginning, was just Bill Ryan and myself, and now it's just myself and Tommy Hansen, who's my webmaster. And now the recent edition of, I've recruited my latest boyfriend to videotape, which he's doing now very diligently. He's actually a very excellent musician. But this is what we're talking about. We don't have crews and people and lights and, you know, money and all this kind of thing. No. We simply are a very small grassroots organization, but I'm very driven as an investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, to make sure that that testimony that I get gets out to you. And so any one-on-one interview that I do, I don't charge for. I put out for free. Now we are packaging them into DVDs, and those we're selling because it takes ages to make a DVD. It's horrible. But we have done that with some, and we're starting to sell those. We're trying to finance my ability to go around to places like this and speak. And I need to pay. Miles didn't pay my airfare to get here, for example. You know, and like that. It costs money. Hotels cost money, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't get paid much, even if we do speak at one of these kind of events. So I am going to speak in Amsterdam after this. After I leave here, I'm going to be speaking in St. Albans here in the UK in, well, it's actually called Watford at Garston Manor, which is also called High Elms Manor or something like that. And I'll be there on the 21st of August, and I'll be talking in the 24th of August in Amsterdam, and I'll be talking in, we've got something organized in Berlin in a castle, a bed and breakfast castle. And so this is kind of like, it's a grassroots effort to try to go on the road with the Camelot information and try to wake people up in small groups around the world.